I didn't start running because I liked it. I started because it was the only thing left that still felt like mine. Everything else had slipped. Sleep went first, not all at once, just shaved down night after night until I was lying there at 3:12 a.m., staring at the ceiling, counting the faint cracks that looked like rivers on a map. Then work followed. I'm a project manager at a mid-sized logistics firm, nothing glamorous, just spreadsheets, deadlines, and constant low-grade panic. We'd taken on too many clients in November, and by mid-December the backlog had turned into something alive. Emails stacked faster than I could answer them. My boss, Oleg, stopped using full sentences and switched to clipped messages like status or fix today. By January, I had that permanent buzzing behind my eyes. You know the kind, like your brain is a fluorescent light that's about to burn out. At home, things weren't better. Katya noticed, of course. She always notices. At first she tried to help, making tea, suggesting we watch something together, asking if I wanted to talk. But after a while, even that faded. Not into anger. That would have been easier. It just dimmed. Conversations got shorter. Silences got longer. The apartment felt like a waiting room neither of us could leave. So I started running. Every morning at 6:30, no matter how little I slept, I'd lace up my shoes, grab my old gray hoodie, and head out before the city fully woke up. There's a park about 10 minutes from our building, nothing special, just a loop of cracked asphalt paths, a few benches, and trees that look skeletal in winter. But at that hour it was quiet enough that I could almost hear myself think. Almost. I kept the same route every time. Past the rusted playground, left at the broken lamppost, straight through the narrow path that cuts between two dense rows of trees. 20 minutes if I kept a steady pace. I never pushed for speed. This wasn't about fitness. It was about not falling apart. The morning it happened, January 17th, I remember because I had a deadline that day. I woke up before the alarm. 6:02 a.m. My phone screen lit the room in that cold, bluish way that makes everything feel unreal. Katya was asleep beside me, facing the wall. I lay there for a minute, listening. Nothing unusual. The faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. A car passing somewhere outside. Pipes ticking softly in the walls. I got up, dressed, and left without waking her. The air hit me as soon as I stepped outside, damp, heavy, colder than I expected. Not freezing, just thick. Like breathing through a wet cloth. I remember pulling my hood up and thinking it might rain later. Then I saw the fog. It wasn't there the night before. I would have noticed. But now it covered everything, a dense, milk-white layer that swallowed the streetlights and blurred the outlines of the buildings. You could still see a few meters ahead, but beyond that, nothing. Just a wall of pale gray. I hesitated for a second. Not out of fear, just confusion. It looked wrong. Too uniform. Too still. Then I checked the time, 6:28, and told myself I didn't have the luxury to overthink weather. I started running. At first it felt normal. My shoes hitting the pavement in that steady rhythm. My breath sinking with my steps. The usual stiffness in my legs from lack of sleep. But as I moved deeper into the fog, something shifted. The city went quiet. Not gradually. Not like sounds fading with distance. It was as if someone had turned a dial all the way down. The distant traffic disappeared. No dogs barking. No early buses groaning past. Even my own footsteps sounded muted, like they were happening somewhere behind me instead of under my feet. I slowed down, instinctively. "Hello," I said out loud, immediately feeling stupid. My voice didn't echo. It didn't carry. It just stopped, maybe a meter in front of me. I kept moving. By the time I reached the park entrance, the fog had thickened. The metal gate was barely visible until I was right in front of it. The familiar path beyond, the one I'd run dozens of times, was reduced to a narrow corridor of gray. I stepped inside. The trees were there, but only as faint shadows that appeared and disappeared as I passed them. The world had shrunk to a bubble around me. 5, maybe 6 meters in every direction. And the silence wasn't just absence of sound anymore. It felt deliberate. Like something was pressing against my ears from the outside. I told myself it was just the weather, just my lack of sleep messing with me. Picked up the pace. Left at the broken lamppost, or where it should have been. I almost missed it because I couldn't see it until the last second. The path narrowed, just like always, hemmed in by trees I could barely make out. I focused on counting steps. 50 at a time. At around 200, I realized something. I couldn't hear my breathing anymore. I was still breathing, I could feel it, the air moving in and out of my chest, but there was no sound. No rasp, no rhythm. I stopped. For a moment I just stood there, listening. Nothing. Not even the faint ringing you get in complete silence. Just blank. I reached into my pocket, more out of habit than anything, and felt my keys. The familiar weight of the small metal ring and the cheap rubber keychain Katia had bought me years ago, a faded blue rectangle with a chipped corner. I squeezed it, grounding myself. "It's fine," I muttered. This time, I barely heard it. I started running again. Deeper into the path. Deeper into the fog that seemed to thicken with every step, as if it was closing in behind me. And somewhere ahead, though I couldn't see anything yet, I had the distinct, undeniable feeling that I wasn't alone anymore. At first I told myself it was just someone else running. The park wasn't remote, even this early. People ran here all the time, retirees with strict routines, a few younger guys training for something, the occasional insomniac like me trying to outrun their own thoughts. So when I noticed movement ahead, a darker shape shifting inside the fog, my brain grabbed onto that idea and held it tight. Another runner. That's all. I slowed slightly, trying to focus. The silhouette was faint, barely more than a vertical smudge in the gray, but it was moving, steady, rhythmic, directly toward me. I felt actual, physical relief. Another person meant normalcy. Sound might come back. Perspective might reset. I raised a hand. "Hey!" I called. The word vanished a few feet in front of my face. The figure didn't react. It kept running. Closer now. I tried to listen for footsteps, anything to confirm it was real. But the silence held. The distance between us closed faster than it should have. Either they were running quicker than I thought, or something about the spacing felt wrong, like depth itself was unreliable. I stopped completely. The figure didn't. It came straight at me. 5 meters. 4. 3. And then it stepped into the edge of what I could actually see. I remember blinking, once, hard, like my eyes needed to reset. Because what I was looking at didn't make sense. It was me. Not, looked like me. Not, similar build, or, same clothes. It was me. Same gray hoodie. Same worn running shoes with the scuffed left toe. Same cheap fitness band on the wrist. Same face. But corrected. His posture was straight, shoulders back, like he'd never spent nights hunched over a laptop. His skin had color, a kind of quiet, healthy warmth that mine hadn't had in months. And his expression. He was smiling. Not politely. Not the quick, automatic smile you give a stranger passing by. Wide. Open. Effortless. Happy. The kind of smile I hadn't felt on my own face in so long I couldn't place when I'd last worn it. My stomach dropped so fast it actually hurt. I took a step back. He stopped. Exactly when I did. For a second, maybe less, we just stood there, facing each other in that suffocating silence. I tried to speak. My throat worked, but the sound didn't exist. His eyes were on me. Not scanning, not confused. Recognizing. Like he knew me better than I knew myself. Then his gaze shifted, not away, but down. To his hand. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted it. Something small dangled between his fingers. Metal caught what little light existed in the fog and gave off a dull glint. I didn't need to see it clearly. I knew what it was before my brain could form the thought. Keys. My keys. The same worn metal ring. The same chipped blue keychain. My hand was already moving to my pocket before I finished the thought. Empty. Cold, immediate panic flooded in so fast it made me dizzy. I looked back up. He was still holding them, letting them swing slightly. That smile never changed. Not even a twitch. I shook my head once. Denial, maybe. No, I tried to say. I think I felt the word more than heard it. His smile widened, not dramatically, just enough that it stopped looking natural. Then, without any warning or shift in posture, he stepped sideways. Not backward. Not turning around. Sideways. Into the fog. Gone. Completely. Like he'd never been there. I stood frozen, staring at the empty gray where he had been. My heart was pounding loud enough that I could almost hear it, or maybe just felt it too strongly to ignore. I took a step forward, toward where he disappeared. Nothing. No shape. No movement. That's when the silence broke. Not gradually. It snapped. Distantly at first, a car horn somewhere far away. Then another. A dog barking. Wind moving through branches. Sound rushed back all at once, like a dam had burst. I gasped, the noise of my own breathing suddenly loud and ragged in my ears. I turned around and started running. Not my usual pace. Not controlled. Just running. I didn't care about the route. I just needed out of that fog, out of that park. My mind kept circling one thing: he had my keys. By the time I reached the park gate, the fog had already begun to thin. The street beyond it was visible again, shapes returning, sounds settling into something normal. Too normal. Like nothing had happened. I doubled over, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. My pocket felt wrong. Light. Empty. I checked it again anyway. Nothing. I straightened slowly and looked back toward the park. The fog was still there, hanging low between the trees. I don't remember the run home clearly. Just flashes, crossing a street without checking for cars, nearly slipping on wet pavement, someone shouting something at me that I didn't understand. But one thought stayed perfectly clear the entire time. Not confusion. Not denial. Something worse. A certainty I couldn't explain. He wasn't lost in the fog. He was ahead of me. And he had already been where I was going. By the time I reached our building, my lungs were burning and my throat tasted like metal. I stopped at the entrance, one hand on the cold metal door, trying to steady myself. The fog hadn't followed me here, or maybe it had just thinned enough to pretend everything was normal again. The street looked the same. Cars parked where they should be. A woman walking her dog across the road, leash taut, phone in her hand. Ordinary. That almost made it worse. I reached into my pocket again. Still empty. The realization hit differently this time. Not like panic, that had already passed through me, but something colder. More precise. He didn't just have something that looked like my keys. He had mine. Which meant one thing I didn't want to say out loud. I turned my head slowly toward the side of the building. Our apartment is on the first floor. One of the reasons we chose it was convenience, no stairs, easy access. There's a narrow strip of dirt and patchy grass beneath the windows, a few old shrubs that never really grew into anything. From the street, you can see straight into the kitchen if the curtains are open. They were open now. And the light was on. I don't remember deciding to move, but suddenly I was there, stepping off the pavement, shoes sinking slightly into the damp ground, approaching the window like I was afraid it might notice me. I reached the window. Voices. Soft at first, muffled through the glass. Then clearer. Laughter. Katia's laughter. I froze. It wasn't just that she was laughing. It was how full, warm, unrestrained. I hadn't heard that sound in months. Not like this. I moved closer, just enough to see inside. The kitchen looked exactly the same. Same chipped table, same uneven cabinet door that never quite closed properly, same cheap kettle pushed to the side of the stove. And at the table, she was sitting there, a mug in her hands, shoulders relaxed, head tilted slightly as she smiled. At him. He was standing by the stove, back to me, wearing my hoodie. Not just a hoodie, mine. The same gray fabric, the same small tear near the cuff on the right sleeve. He moved casually, like he belonged there. Like he had always belonged there. Cracking eggs into a pan, reaching for salt without looking, flipping something with an ease I didn't recognize in myself. Katia said something I couldn't fully hear. He laughed. I felt that sound in my chest like a physical blow. Because it was my voice. Not similar. Not close. Exact. But without the strain. Without the dryness that had crept into mine over the past months. Clear. Light. Alive. I leaned closer to the glass, my breath fogging a small circle on it. He turned slightly. Just enough for me to see his face in profile. That same smile. That same impossible, effortless calm. And Katia reached out and touched his hand. Not hesitantly. Not out of obligation. Naturally. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. Something inside me twisted so sharply I had to grip the window frame to stay upright. I stumbled back and moved toward the building entrance, faster this time, my steps uneven. The hallway inside smelled the same as always, dust, old paint, something faintly sour that never quite went away. The flickering light above the stairs buzzed softly. Everything exactly as it should be. I reached our door. Closed. I grabbed the handle and tried it anyway. Locked. Of course it was. My hand hovered there for a second, trembling. Then I knocked. Hard. Katia. I shouted. This time the sound existed. It echoed faintly in the hallway. No response. I knocked again, louder. Katia, open the door. Inside, I heard movement. Chairs shifting. The faint clink of something against ceramic. Then his voice. Calm. Close. Yeah. Not, who is it? Not confusion. Just acknowledgement. Like he already knew. My mouth went dry. It's me, I said. Open the door. A pause. I could almost feel him standing on the other side, listening. Then Katia's voice, softer, confused, who is that? Silence. A longer pause. Then his answer, I don't know. Not uncertain. Not questioning. Definitive. Like he was stating a fact. I hit the door with my palm. What do you mean you don't know? Katia, it's me. Opened the door. Footsteps approached. For a second, just a second, hope flared. The handle shifted slightly. Then stopped. A shadow moved under the door, just visible in a thin strip of light. I held my breath. But the door didn't open. Instead, I heard the lock turn. Once. A clean, final click. Not unlocking. Securing. The footsteps retreated. Inside, the quiet conversation resumed, low and indistinct. Then, after a few seconds, Katia laughed again. That same warm, effortless laugh. Like nothing was wrong. Like everything was exactly as it should be. I stood there, hands still on the door, feeling something inside me start to slip. Not break. Not snap. Just loosen. Like a thread being slowly pulled free. I knocked again. Not as hard this time. Katia, I said, quieter. Please. No answer. I pressed my forehead against the door. The wood felt cold, solid. Real. I waited. Nothing changed. So I stepped back. Outside again, the street looked even more normal than before. A car drove past, tires hissing softly on damp asphalt. I stepped onto the sidewalk. A man walked toward me, middle-aged, dark coat, headphones in. He looked straight ahead, not at his phone. Right at me. Excuse me, I said, stepping into his path. He didn't slow down. Didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. He walked straight through me. I don't mean he brushed past my shoulder. I mean there was a moment, less than a second, where his body overlapped mine. No impact. No resistance. Just nothing. Like we occupied the same space for an instant, and then he was behind me, still walking. I turned sharply. Hey. My voice sounded wrong. Thinner. Distant. He didn't react. I looked down at my hands. They were there. But not fully. The edges looked soft, not blurred exactly, just less defined. Like I was slightly out of focus compared to everything else. I had the sudden, ridiculous urge to press my palms together just to confirm I could still feel myself. I could. But the sensation was muted, like touching something through a thin layer of plastic. I forced myself to keep moving. Past the small grocery store on the corner. Past the bus stop where two people stood talking. No one looked at me. No one reacted when I passed too close. One woman stepped forward at the exact moment I crossed in front of her, and that same impossible overlap. No contact. No acknowledgement. I stopped in front of the store window. At first I saw the street behind me clearly. The buildings. The dull gray sky. A passing car. Then, something moved where I should have been. A shape. Faint. Like a shadow trying to remember its form. I lifted my hand. The reflection followed, but slower. Not delayed exactly. Just less certain. Like it had to think about it. I turned away before I could look too long. A car door slammed nearby and I flinched. When I glanced back at the glass for just a second, the shape was fainter still. I didn't look again. I pressed my hands against my chest. I could still feel my heartbeat. Strong. Real. But everything else felt like it was slipping out of sync, like a radio station slowly drifting off its frequency. I looked back toward my building. The kitchen window, light still on, movement inside, solid and warm and alive. I took a step toward it. My foot barely made a sound. Another step. Lighter. Another. By the time I reached the entrance, I noticed I couldn't feel the ground properly anymore. Not fully. Like there was a thin layer of distance between me and everything I touched. I reached for the door handle. My hand passed through it on the first try. I jerked back, staring. Tried again. This time I forced myself to focus, to expect resistance. My fingers met metal. Solid. But only barely. Like holding onto something through thick gloves. I pulled the door open and stepped inside. The hallway seemed longer than before. The flickering light buzzed louder, then softer. Halfway down, I caught sight of myself in the small mirror someone had hung crookedly on the wall months ago. I stopped. Almost nothing there. A suggestion of a figure. A distortion more than a reflection, like heat rising from summer asphalt. I raised my hand. The thing in the mirror moved, but it didn't look like me anymore. I didn't stop to study it. I stumbled the rest of the way to the door. It stood there, unchanged. Closed. Solid. Real in a way I no longer felt. From inside, I could hear them. Plates being set aside. Water running. Katia humming something under her breath, a tune I didn't recognize because she hadn't done that in so long. Because he had given her a reason to. I reached for the door. My fingers trembled. Not from fear. From the growing certainty that if I didn't do something now, there wouldn't be anything left of me to do it with. I knocked. Once. Soft. The sound barely registered. Inside, the water stopped. Footsteps approached. The handle turned. Slowly. And the door began to open. It didn't open all the way. Just enough for the darkness of the hallway behind it to press outward, like it had weight. No light spilled into the corridor. Our hallway light is always on. Katia hates walking into a dark apartment. She used to joke that even shadows feel different when you can't see their edges. Now there was nothing. Just a narrow gap and something deeper than dark behind it. I didn't move. I wasn't sure I still could. Then he stepped into view. Close enough that if I had still been fully there I could have reached out and touched him. He looked exactly like me. No, he looked like what I was supposed to be. Clean. Rested. Present. His posture was perfect. His eyes weren't tired. They weren't searching. They were settled. And that smile. Up close, it was worse. Not stretched, not grotesque in any obvious way, just extended a few degrees past what felt human. Like it didn't have a reason to stop. He didn't say anything. Didn't blink. Just looked at me like I was something he'd been expecting. Behind him, deeper in the apartment, I heard movement. Katia, somewhere in another room, unaware. I tried to speak. My throat tightened and nothing came. He tilted his head slightly. Slow. Considered. Then his gaze dropped, not to my face, but to where my chest should have been. I didn't look down. I already knew. A thin, hollow pressure built in my chest, not quite pain, not quite fear. Something like the memory of both. I forced my hand forward. It moved slower than I intended, like pushing through thick liquid. Toward him. Toward the doorway. For a second, nothing happened. Then he stepped forward. Into me. Not through me. Into. And suddenly I felt something again. Weight. Resistance. Pressure. Not mine. His. Cold. Wrong. His hand closed around my wrist. Completely solid. The contrast hit so hard my entire sense of self, whatever was left of it, snapped into focus around that one point of contact. I tried to pull back. I couldn't. His grip tightened. Still smiling. Still silent. And then he pulled. Not violently. Not with force. Just decisively. Like there was no alternative outcome. The doorway widened as I moved forward, though I never saw it open further. The darkness inside shifted, making space. I crossed the threshold. For a moment, a fraction of a second, I thought I saw the apartment as it should be. The table. The kettle. Katia near the sink, her back turned, humming softly. Warm light. Normal. Then it folded. Not disappeared, folded. Like something thin being bent inward. The space narrowed. Warped. Everything pulled toward a point somewhere deeper inside. His hand never let go. The air felt thicker with every step. Harder to move through. Harder to think. I tried to look back. The hallway was still there. The open door. The outside. For 1 second I thought I can still leave. Then he spoke. First time. Quiet. Right next to my ear. You already did. His voice was mine. Perfect. Clear. Alive. The last thing I saw was the door. It closed slowly, without being touched. The edge of it cut through the remaining light, narrowing it to a thin line. Then nothing. Just before it shut completely, I heard something small. Precise. Familiar. The sound of the lock turning. Once. Clean. Final. And then no sound at all.